Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm really excited to be here with Anna Anthropy, designer of Princess with a Cursed Sword, now live with Central Michigan University Press. How you doing today, Anna?
Quick note, it's
Yes.
pronounced cursed. Princess with a cursed sword.
Ooh, that's even better. Okay, Princess with a
Yeah,
Cursed
that way you
Sword.
get the rhythm to the stresses. It's very good.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm actually including a pronunciation guide in the book because I think it loses something when people say it as cursed sword. It
Very
doesn't have
well.
the impact, you know.
Fair. Okay, Princess with a Cursed Sword.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, for people who don't know what they're getting into, tell us just about the game.
Yeah. So Princess with a Cursed Sword is, I mean, at this point, it's a series of 5 games that were originally released as single-page solo journaling RPGs, starting with the original Princess with a Cursed Sword in 2020. And so they are games that use tarot cards and are very open ended. Typically, what you'll do is you will draw a tarot card and you will use both kind of like a set of prompts that are like a set of loose prompts. So it's not necessarily like each card, suit, and rank has its own prompts. It's more like choosing off a menu, I think. And you'll combine that with the image on the card, your associations with the card, to kind of produce a passage in the story you're telling, which in the original game is about a princess exploring some ruins, trying to find a way to get rid of her horrible sword. But there are a bunch of sequels, including there's one about uh, running a tavern in an occupied city, like a city under military occupation, like Chicago is right now. um, there is there's one about interpreting an empress's dreams, and there's a new one in this coming in this book about basically about like a child wizard trying to figure out confusing book of spells they're not supposed to have.
Ooh, I love a kid with a book they're not supposed to have, probably because I was one of those kids. Um, here's a good question. So for people who are going to back this campaign and maybe they've encountered earlier versions of Princess with a Cursed
Mhm.
Sword, what is going into the CLGS version of this game, and how does it differ from what has come before?
Yeah, what we're calling the bound edition. It's going to be like a nice hardcover book. One of the so there's a lot of stuff that is new in it. I think before even getting to any of the new stuff, one of the things that I think is what maybe this is me speaking as the designer. One of the things that I really like about it is just having the books, having the games together. Uh, I think there is a narrative in seeing them together and giving them room to interconnect and be in conversation with each other. There's a bunch of new rules about ways to incorporate the games with each other, and almost as if they're like kind of modular. Um, so some of the new stuff, the rules have been rewritten and expanded to be a lot more clear. You know, the original versions of the game are 1 page, and so there's only so much room to kind of explain. Um, and so there are revised rules. There are also some new mechanics, some new optional mechanics for drawing more cards if you feel like you need more prompting. There's a double card mechanic that I really like that's new to every game in the book. There's a new 2 player mode, which I'm really excited about, which allows you to play it as kind of an epistolary game, um, which is really fun. And I brought on five five writer designers to narrate um, their own playthroughs of each of the games. So every game in the book, all five of them, have a little anthology piece by a guest author um, who played the game and kind of turned their journaling into like a work of microfiction. And so that includes like people like Shirang Beeswax, Jack DeKeat from Friends at the Table, Jupiter Wildwood, like a bunch of people that I'm really excited to be collaborating with. It's also fully illustrated by Evelyn Moreau, who I think is like one of the most exciting up and coming artists. And it's just a gorgeous little book.
I'm very, very excited about this.
Mm-hmm.
So, just kind of get a sense of like the scope and like of time for this project.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you originally, I guess, get the idea for Princess with a Cursed Sword? And what were the early stages of the game like, and when did you start on it?
Yeah. So Princess with the Crystal Sword actually has its origin in a different game. There's a game called A Singular Quest by Gregor Vuga. It was like a one-page game that was created for a game jam. But I used to run it in my classes as a way of kind of introducing students to role playing and how it works and what that kind of collaborative storytelling is like. It's like an interesting game in that there's kind of like one player character and then everyone else plays the GM. And so I would have all of the students in my class play as the GM. And one of the options, one of the character creation combos you can kind of arrive at is a cursed princess. And so I was like, and so I chose this character, and I was like, well, what is a cursed princess? What makes a princess cursed? And I thought about the kind of the old school RPG idea of curses, where it's like you have a you have a sword or an item or something you're wearing that just will not let you take it off. Um, and that was like the genesis of the idea. I was like, I kind of, after I did this class, I was like, I kind of want to know more about this princess. I kind of want to know what her deal is. And that ended up becoming the genesis for the first game in the series. Just like, what is this princess's deal?
And then now that you've been kind of like back in contact with your work to
Mm-hmm.
expand it and like publish it anew, um, what has that been like for you as a designer? Has it been like a good revisitation? And like how much change in yourself can you see from edition one to now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting in a lot of ways because in some ways, I see a lot of the limitations of the original format, which again was like a one-page thing, and like I think part of what was interesting about that game emerged as a result of trying to fit things into a single page. But I also feel like I think I feel I for years have been sitting with like I can see the parts of this that people might struggle with because there's limited time given to explaining all of these ideas. Um, but I think one of the biggest things is that like the journey of because Princess with a Cursed Sword is like 5 games now, and the first one you were playing a princess, and so I think there's a real journey. There's been a real journey around the way in which those games talk about and are interested in power and how power manifests. Because we start with a princess, right, which is like a monarchist figure, and like depending on how the player takes it, depending on like what your idea of a princess is someone who's either very powerless or very powerful. Um, and then the rest of the games kind of fill in like these very different ideas about what what power and ruling looks like. You know, the second game is about someone like trying to support a community of outlaws in an occupied city, and so then it's a very different relationship to like power and hierarchy. And so with the last game, the new game in the book, Thaumaturge, I feel like there's almost like a full circle thing where we've gone from being someone who is like powerful, who is burdened with something that makes them, you know, that less than in some way, the princess with the cursed sword. We've gone to someone fully powerless who chances into something that elevates them. This, you know, nobody little magician with their magical book that they're not supposed to have. And so it does feel like there's an arc between those, both for me as a designer and I think in terms of, you know, storytelling.
Speaking of storytelling, one thing I noticed in my like brief perusal of the rules was that you ask players to write in the third person as though they are telling a story. And I feel like in most solo journaling RPGs I've encountered to date, like I'm no expert, I've just played a few, but I feel like you're asked to write the first person, that you're like embodying something very directly. So why did you make the third person writing choice? And what has that gotten out of the experience of the game that you were looking for players to have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that writing constraints are really interesting and a really um, and I think give us a lot of really give us a way to frame the relationship between the player and the character. Um, and so each of the games actually has like a different writing constraint. In Princess with the Cursed Sword, it is right in third person because the idea there is that you're telling a story about someone. You're writing a fairy tale. You are chronicling something that maybe happened in history, but maybe wasn't written down exactly as it happened. It's been embellished over the years. Like all that sort of play comes from the fact that it's not that there's distance, right? And so each of the games has this kind of um, its own kind of spin on that. Tavern at the End of the World, you're asked to like write in code in case your ledger is ever confiscated by the occupation, and so you have to allude to things. Um, you have to use like coded language and be very guarded. And I think that's a really interesting way to put characterization into the like mechanical act of writing. Um, and again, it's like one of the things about I think a solo game that I think is really powerful is that because it's kind of just you and the page, you can choose how much you want to explore that or lean into that, how much of an element of your personal play that becomes, right? But that is like one of the shades in like the palette of the game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, you know, the choice to make it a solo RPG. Obviously, I, as a solo gamer, almost exclusively in my free time, I'm
Mm-hmm.
very happy that there are solo options. But was that something that was immediately apparent to you about this game? And you know, how much of what proportion of your gaming is solo?
Yeah. Well, I made the original Princess with the Crystal Sword during. Um, actually, I didn't make it during lockdown. I made it right before, which was interesting timing. And the rest of the a bunch of the early games came during the COVID pandemic. Um, yeah, I think there was a degree to which at that time I found solo tabletop game design really freeing in that it the approach to, I'm someone who came into tabletop game design from digital game design, where there's a degree to which um, you are kind of making things and then running through them yourself, and then tweaking things and then running through them again. There's like this iterative process, and the cycle of playtesting in like a tabletop game with like other people with like a group setting is like different, and is like also like valuable and important, and like leads to some really amazing discoveries. But I think Princess with a Cursed Sword really was a product of this transitional moment where designing solo games really helped me to work through the process of putting an entire game together, because I could kind of structure something and then be like, okay, let me go through this and then think about whether this structure works or how the structure needs to be changed. And so working on solo game, and I still make solo games. I haven't left solo games behind, but it was for me a way to enter into making. It was like a path into designing tabletop games that were not just solo games. I think it's such a valuable format for designers, especially because of the breadth of expressivity and the degree to which designing is also playing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe especially for solo design. I play my own stuff a lot. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's a good way to iterate. So you also mentioned that the sort of the inspiration for Princess with a Cursed Sword was a game that you used in a class. So tell me about this class.
Yeah. So this class was so I taught game design for 9 years at like a university level in Chicago. Was laid off recently. Now I'm just doing my own weird stuff. Yep. Laid off during federal budget cuts. Surprise, surprise. Um, but yeah. So one of my favorite classes that I taught was a class in games literacy, which was a kind of a combination of like a history class, a theory class, a class that bridges tabletop games, yard games, digital games, kind of many different types of play. And as part of that class, we talk through role playing and how role playing kind of emerges from wargaming, and then is transformed over the course of the 2000s into like its own, like this entirely different thing, this like story games movement, right? Um, so I always have a mix of students who have either only played like D&D and Pathfinder, or who haven't played any RPGs. And so I was really looking for a way for like a game that I could use to introduce the like, this is how story games work. This is the way in which conversation is like a play mechanic, right? And this is how you can start getting a sense of like the kind of collaboration that happens when you are playing a role playing game with people. Um, and so, yeah, I don't remember how I found Gregor Vuga's A Singular Quest. It was like, I think, an early find on itch.io for me, back when people were like first starting, back when like tabletop RPG people were first starting to migrate onto itch. But it really, the simplicity of it really captivated me, and the kind of inversion of the traditional player GM structure was so fascinating and fit the classroom format so well. Um, that yeah, it became this component of my class that like every quarter for a different group of kids, I would run this RPG as a way of being like, this is what RPGs are like, this is what they can be, this is the type of play that happens um, when there's a conversation with rules, right? Um, and it really transformed my ideas about tabletop role playing design as well. You know, it's probably the reason that the original Princess Sword games are single page games.
That's really interesting. All right. So, there are original Princess games. There's more coming out. I guess one question I just have is: do you foresee further installments in this series in the future?
That's such an interesting question, and I have no idea. In my mind, this is going to be a way to kind of like put them to bed. You know, that I'm
Mm-hmm.
like designing. I'm I put together this fifth final game. I'm putting them in a nice collection. I'm saying here they are. This is their final form, and enjoy. um, and and people, I have made an SRD, which is also going to be in the book, and people are making their own games in the system, and so I'm like, I'd like to be like, it's yours now. Just I'm done with this idea. You can all, it's yours to do with now. But who knows? Because I kept feeling like, the original Princess with the Cursed Sword was supposed to be a one-off, but I kept coming back to that system because the system kept fitting kinds of stories that I wanted to tell, and so I could make more. Who knows? Maybe maybe another 5 years we have another Kickstarter. There's another 5 games. I don't know.
I wouldn't complain. What other designs are you currently working on?
Yeah. So what can I talk about?
It's
um,
okay. I'm only media. You can tell me everything.
uh, yeah. So I'm I'm working on. I'm doing some writing narrative design work for a browser game that people know about. And I'm not going to say which one, but you can hopefully look for that in a few months. That will be ready. Excited for that to come out. I'm currently teaching a workshop in interactive fiction that just started and is really exciting. I'm hoping to be able to offer more workshops like that in the future. Um, and what else am I working on? And yeah, and just surviving, I think, is the other big thing. Keeping myself and my cat alive right now. Um, yeah. Um, I feel like there's something else, but I forgot about it. So there you go.
It's just a sign of productivity. All right, so it's time for me to ask you just a couple softy questions to round out.
Oh, I love
Um,
those.
yes. So the first I always ask is, what have you been playing recently that you've really enjoyed?
Wow. So, I will say I've been playing a lot of solo board games, actually, interestingly. Yeah, I kickstarted 52 Realms a while ago, which is this like um, this really kind of simple dungeon crawly game that uses like a standard deck of playing cards, and it has this like really juicy damage mechanic where damage that you've received is like represented by cards, and the values of the cards represent how wounded you are. And so, if you have like if you draw like a two, that's you're fine. It's not anything to worry about. If you draw like a seven or like a king, then like that's a big problem. And so kind of the more the harder you get hit for, the bigger wound cards you have to accept if you draw them. So it has this really interesting, yeah, it's like this really um, elegant system for like making decisions more risky, but still having like a lot of like you could still fly close to the sun and survive, which I think is really cool. I just got I don't know if you know the Gladden paper app games. They're like little notebooks that have I think one of them's a dungeon crawl.
Oh, I play. Is this the one where you get like the P6 pencil?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I have played one of those. Yep.
He has a new one that he just kickstarted that is a first person like wizardry type dungeon crawler. And I just got my copy of that, so that's been very fun. It has a little. It has like a little grid, and you're like filling out the map as you go. That's really fun. I've been playing Kinfire Delve
Yeah.
also. Kinfire, it's I have a set that has like an easy character and a hard character, and I've beaten it with the easy character, and now I'm trying to do it with the hard character. Have not succeeded yet, but that game is really pretty.
Yes, it is. It is a very
Yeah.
attractive game. And then if people want to find you online and follow your work, where do you like to be found?
Yeah, the best place is at my storefront in Itch.io, which is w.itch.io or which.io. Um, that's where like all my stuff is, my tabletop games, my digital games, my zines, all that stuff is all there. You can also find me on Blue Sky, is the only social media I'm on currently. We'll see how long that lasts. At Cybergirl, the word cyborg, URL. Um, and I post a lot of nonsense over there. But I also occasionally remember to link to things I'm working on. So you could follow
Fantastic.
me there.
Amazing. All right, and so everybody, Princess with a Cursed Sword and various games will be part of crowdfunding. It's going to launch on October 1st. Obviously, there'll be a link in the show notes. Anna, do you have any last things to say for people who are thinking about this game?
Um, yeah, I guess I would just like to say, I'm very grateful to everyone who's bought the single page, versions of the games over the years, and especially the people who are like making their own games with the system. They have really made it possible for this new bound edition that I'm like so excited about to exist and like be a thing in the world. And yeah, I'm just hoping that um, people will be excited about the games when they're collected in their hardcover book form.
Fantastic. Anna, thank you so much for
Also,
coming on.
also, fuck
Yeah,
ice, free Palestine.
very well. Anna, thank you so much for coming on. It has been an absolute delight to have you, and I'm really, really looking forward to this edition of your game.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
All right, everybody, please like, subscribe, comment, ask questions. Go check out this crowdfund, and happy gaming.